My name is Michael Shikatano, and this is Right Here, Right Now, a podcast to inspire the learner inside each of us. In a world that is full of so much information, we will help find and package that information so that you can use it in your lives every day in practical ways. And in each episode, we will remind you of the importance of being present and mindful of your daily thoughts, actions, and interactions. It is truly the most vital step to learning and growth, being mindful and present right here, right now, to take on life's challenges and turn them into life's lessons. So come on this venture with us, a new beginning, a new journey that starts right here, right now. Welcome back, people. I am Michael Shikatano, your host of Right Here, Right Now, the podcast that has given me the gift of knowing that we can unlock the hidden potential within ourselves and help others to do the same. The podcast that has taught me that some things are more challenging to get done than others, and coming at the challenges from a slightly or radically different angle can help spark the creativity needed to excel and then come out with those lessons. The podcast that continues to inspire me and hopefully each of you to embrace the ever-present and practical concept that learning and learning how to learn can propel us down a path with deliberate and passionate intention. The podcast that has hopefully instructed and demonstrated to each of you that being mindful and present and aware of what we need to pay attention to is the first step on our journey of learning how to improve ourselves. So much emphasis on the self-awareness journey here, people, and this helps us on our journey of learning better ways to learn in getting the right things done, right? So meta, learning how to learn. Wow. I am so glad to be back on the writing and recording path to sharing and learning alongside each of you. I've been reading and absorbing some incredible information that I will be sharing with each of you in the next few months. And the book that will be the focus of today's episode has been a huge help in getting me back on track with motivation required to get this work done, this creative work that I'm so passionate about. The book is titled Limitless by Jim Kwik. He is a widely recognized world expert in memory improvement, brain optimization, and accelerated learning. And after he suffered a childhood brain injury that left him with learning challenges, he created strategies to dramatically enhance his mental performance. And he has since dedicated his life to helping others unleash their brain's true potential. And hopefully together, today, right here, right now, we will help each other to unleash our true potential, right? That uncovering of our most authentic selves. And I was fascinated, maybe even a little overwhelmed by the sheer amount of information in this book and the practical concepts that he shares that can help boost our capacity to learn, boost our potential, and hence boost our capacity to accomplish really almost anything. In fact, the premise of this book and Kwik's passionate career is that we expend a great deal of time and energy in learning many things as we develop through our lives. But he learned something about the learning process and he's sharing it with all of us, right? Stop and think of when it was that you learned how to learn. This is it here, people. And Kwik calls this that meta learning, right? He also says that if knowledge is power, right? We've all heard that. Then learning is our superpower, right? That's how we gain more knowledge if we do it correctly, if we do it effectively. And his concepts are well aligned with one of my favorite gurus of the learning and growth and thinking communities of learners of our time, right? The thought leader, Adam Grant, right? We must learn, unlearn, and relearn, and not be afraid to get pretty uncomfortable in this process. You've heard this before if you're paying attention, following along with the podcast, right? It is not comfortable to not know something. To admit that we do not know is scary. Or worse, we may feel shameful if we admit that we were even wrong. However, people, this is the only place that we can truly start on the path to learning. And this is a wonderful concept that I will share as the theme today. So think about that. Think about being a little bit uncomfortable. Think about what it takes to learn. You have to unlearn and relearn. And it's a tough process. It's not just about reading a book and absorbing information. It really is challenging what your beliefs have been over time. And, as we pull out some of Jim Kwik's more valuable instructions on how to be a better learner, I'm going to share my passion with each of you that we should all be learning something every day. And starting today, let's learn a few of the ways that we can be better learners. Always be on the lookout for the lessons in life, people. Being open to learning and knowing that there is far more that we do not know than any of us could ever know humbles us and puts us in a state of constant curiosity, right? Spoiler alert here, we're going to actually learn a little bit about the science behind opening our minds, right? You've heard me talk about that. Open mind, open heart. And this is the basis of today's episode. This was a tough one. Again, so much information from this book and sharing some myths about learning and breaking down some of the barriers and beliefs that limit our potential. That's going to be what we're talking about today. I highly recommend that you pick up this book if learning is a passion for you, because there's no way I can pack in the concepts that he shares on improving memory and why improving our memory is a wonderful way to increase our capacity to learn, right? Quite simply, the exercise of using our memory develops learning and the memory schema that promote improved ability to learn. The more you remember, the more you can learn. It sounds simple, but he shares these amazing guidelines and concepts to have a better memory and use that to be a better learner. And he dives deep into being an active participant in the learning process. And I think that's what's missing in some of our ways that we go about learning. We expect it almost like osmosis, that it just enters our mind and we got it. And he tells us that the often cited notion that reading is the foundation of all learning. And he teaches us in this book, believe it or not, how to be better readers. And I love reading, but I learned how to be a better reader by reading this book. I mean, he really has very specific methods to double your reading speed with exercises with improved retention and comprehension. Powerful, powerful stuff here, people. I was blown away. So today, let's take an approach that will help to become more aware of some of the barriers to learning and growth and provide some insight into helping to remove the obstacles that will help set you up for improving your capacity to learn. With challenges that we face and living our lives with an openness to learn, we are sure to face the prospect of a lesson amidst these challenges. Sometimes it may take some time for the lessons to manifest, and other times it hits us square in the nose and jolts us into a new way of looking at the challenge, with enough time perhaps to employ the lesson to that challenge that we're currently facing. You got to be open to those lessons, people, and look for them. So, of course, I'd love to share a quote that got me to sit up and pay very close attention to this book. It's from his introduction, where Kwik describes the journey we are all on in life, especially if you're listening to this podcast. And I loved what he wrote here. The ultimate adventure we are all on is to reveal and realize our fullest potential and inspire others to do the same. I love this. I love this as a healthcare leader. I love this as a parent, of course. It's just amazing, that last part, inspire others to reveal and realize their fullest potential. Let's start with ourselves too, people. And let's begin with some of the things that get in the way of learning. Things that are effectively stripping our attention and mind from the task at hand for new knowledge. And Kwik calls these supervillains of learning. Now, these are basically 4 different types of barriers to learning that we constantly face in the information age that we live in. I think it's safe to say that human beings have never been in a position to have at their fingertips more information than at any point in history, with no end in sight. So we must try to navigate these barriers to learning. And his first supervillain that he talks about is digital deluge. Really, it's what we see every moment of our lives. Too much data or information consumption in too little time. Our brains really, they're just not prepared for this at the pace that we push our brains to keep up with this deluge. We must have downtime, he tells us. Our minds must be allowed to wander and even be bored, right? The good old days, I remember being bored as a kid back in the 80s, right? Pretty often, actually, when we didn't have all this technology just coming at us. He actually suggests that we should schedule time, maybe about 30 minutes or so of white space time that he calls it. And it's time spent away from technology, time dedicated to clear your mind, relax, slow down, maybe even unleash some creativity in there, maybe some creative new angle on a challenge or a problem that you're facing. It's really, really wonderful. You've heard me talk so often about the concepts of curiosity, wonder, fascination, right? It's like your mind is creating a reality that it's not aware of when you're bored. And you're sort of filling in the blanks when you're being curious about something. And when you're asking questions, right? The mind is coming in a little more open when we ask those questions, clearing the way, perhaps, for more knowledge, new knowledge, and novel ideas, instead of being fed what the algorithms think that you need to consume. More on those questions, those oh so important questions coming up. The next supervillain he talks about is digital distraction. And we're just online all the time, always connected to the digital world. And he tells us that it creates an enormous disconnect. We know this, right? With our real world. And staying connected to our technology, Kwik postulates, it makes us feel more secure, but certainly not more happy or fulfilled or connected in the real life sense of the word. Believe it or not, distractions train our brain to be distracted. It's why we're so good at it these days. I'm going to say that again. Distractions train our brain to be distracted. So if we can train our brain to be distracted, we can certainly train our brain to be more focused. Right here, right now. So let's snap out of it, people. Take a nice deep breath here and be mindful and be present right here, right now. And let's focus our attention on the third supervillain of learning, digital dementia, he calls it. And this is basically the overuse of technology that results in the breakdown of our cognitive abilities. How many times do you hear it? Every single day. Oh, Google it, just search it up, right? We don't give our brains a chance to work when we so quickly and reflexively rely on our technology. Our brains are more like muscles, people, right? And much less like hard drives. We use this muscle more effectively when we need to use our brain more often, and this will allow us to learn and remember more effectively. And the fourth super villain here that Kwik outlines for us is digital deduction, which is somewhat related, I think, to the digital dementia that he talks about. And we see that deduction really is the critical thinking and problem solving and creativity here. So with the overuse and over-reliance on technology, we outsource this crucial power of our brains. We look for ideas and we look for answers elsewhere on our technology. And Kwik writes beautifully that we outsource our formulation of ideas and opinions to our devices, and hence our minds are becoming stale and stagnant as a result. So all of these supervillains point to one thing as an antidote, people. Stop relying on that technology. Stop reflexively going to an answer that someone else is going to give you, especially based on the way that these search engines work. And now we're going to be dealing with artificial intelligence and all of that we're all going to be learning about soon. Use your mind, people. It's a really wonderful muscle that you need to keep using. And we use those devices for so much information in such a short amount of time, right? To get the quick answers from the machines. Make some time to use your brain before it's too late. Challenge your brain every day in so many ways. And that includes being a little bit bored, people. My advice, being bored in nature, perhaps equipped with some thought-provoking questions. It's the ultimate in allowing the mind to wander and create what has not yet been thought of. And these concepts are related to what Kwik outlines with our potential to have limitless brain power, right? Move some of these barriers out of the way. And he talked a bit about neuroscience, right? Essentially the study of how our brains work. The science teaches us that neuroplasticity is why we are capable of almost anything. Truly limitless potential here. What he describes is that when you learn something new, your brain is literally making a new synaptic connection. They're physical changes that are made in the brain. Your brain is always changing and molding itself to your surroundings and to the demands you place on it. You can decide to change the way your brain functions, and it's those challenges that our brains face routinely that help to breed resilience, among other things that lead to our growth, our learning, and our success. And I just wanted to go back again to this concept of learning, right? I love how he describes this, where we can take complete control of our learning so that we can truly be prepared for unknowable future situations, right? An unknowable future is really what I've talked about in the past. I love how he packaged this, though. What I took from reading this is the open mind, open heart concept of being open to learning. We do not know what's going to happen in the next moments of our lives. But if we're open to learning the lessons as we face our challenges, and even through our successes, we can evolve into better learners, people. And one of the keys to having a limitless journey here, the key to making yourself limitless, is unlearning false assumptions. And we talked a little bit about self-love a few episodes ago, if you remember. And some of our limiting beliefs are often revealed in our negative self-talk, that hypercritical voice inside your head. How often do we stop ourselves from attempting to do something and accomplish something, or we slow down the pace of a project that you're making good progress on because that voice convinces you that it's out of your reach? Perhaps that voice says you're not worthy of it or capable of completing it. Just a reminder here, if your limiting beliefs are in control, if you allow that inner voice to be in complete control, you can and will likely find yourself mired in underachievement. So bring back some of that self-love and remind yourself that you and the voice in your head have a great amount of control over your emotions and your mood. And it starts with that self-talk, that self-critical being inside you. The inner voice can be your best friend or your worst enemy. you can begin to create the habitual sound and tone of that voice in allowing you to reach your full potential. What you choose and how your inner critic manifests is mostly up to you. It's not easy, people. You must be mindful of it and practice being more kind to yourself more often. It takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of discipline to stop, quiet that voice. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this section of the episode, and we'll lead into it with another quote. And this one is from Wayne Dyer. There is one grand lie, that we are limited. The only limits we have are the limits we believe. Wow. And Kwik outlines 3 keys to minimize those limiting beliefs and develop a superhero mindset. And what he tells us first, we have to name our limiting beliefs. So you must realize and notice what that voice says to you and begin to pay attention to those things. You must tell yourself that just because you haven't always been good at something in the past doesn't mean that you can't be great at it now, or even just a little better every day. And this is a great lesson for many of us people, but parents specifically, share this one with your children. Going to go back and say this again. You have to tell yourself that just because you haven't always been good at something in the past doesn't mean that you can't be great at it now, or even just a little better every day. And the second key here is, when we're talking about minimizing the limiting beliefs, is get the facts, people. My goodness, all of those limiting beliefs, the voice in your head, again, telling you that you can't. So often the voice is just plain wrong. That's your voice's opinion. That's because these limiting beliefs play so heavily on our emotions, and you get caught up in that spiral of negative self-talk and negative outcomes. And then you talk negatively to yourself some more. Begin to notice and break the cycle here, people, and be factual. Push back on that voice in your head. And the last key to minimizing those limiting beliefs is to create a new belief, right? You named the limiting belief. You checked out how real those limiting beliefs are. Now generate a new belief that's both truer and more beneficial to you and the path that you want to be on. And Kwik writes pretty practically here, right? That we must understand that that inner critic is not the real you. And he tells us maybe to even give it a cartoonish persona. Name that inner voice, really. And he says we must mock it for its rigid dedication to negativity. It's not helpful, people. And this book is just so jam-packed with incredible information, right? And creating this episode was tough, trying to fit it all in. And I highly recommend, again, getting the book and reading it. And it's going to probably be one of those books that I go back and reread at some point, especially since he's helping to teach us how to read faster with greater comprehension. I love it. I got to go back and practice some of those exercises that he has in this book. So let's continue on today's journey as we talk a little more about learning and what restricts us from our capacity for learning. And Kwik outlines that there's 7 lies of learning, right? There's sort of myths about learning that we're going to bust today, right here, right now. And the first lie of learning that Kwik outlines is that intelligence is fixed. But we know with the growth mindset, if you listen to episode 1 of season 2 of Right Here, Right Now, we have the ability to improve anything. We are not limited by our innate ability, especially when it comes to intelligence. And really what this does for our society is that it relieves a person of the burden of expectation. So that's where this sort of mantra comes from, right? But we must realize and help to manifest in our lives that what is innate is our unlimited capacity to grow and learn and evolve in a limitless way. That is what is inside of us. And Kwik tells us that intelligence is fluid, and we can help cultivate this with one magic word that we can end many statements with that will give us the power of possibility. This is something I'm not good at yet. So you might not be good at something. You might need to work on something. That word yet, right? Let's call that the power of yet, people here. I love it. And the lie of learning number 2 is that we only use 10% of our brains. Again, this sort of sets us up for lower expectations of ourselves, right? If we only could just use more of our brains, what we could possibly achieve. Kwik tells us that we have all the power of our brains available to us now. And while we have the capacity to use all of our brains, some people use their brains better than others, right? Go back to those supervillains of learning, those digital distractions, not a good use of your brain. And what you're doing right here, right now, is unleashing the capacity of your brain to be more effective and efficient by using your brain a little bit more effectively. And the lie of learning number 3 is mistakes are failures. Oh, this one's profound for me. And Albert Einstein reminded us of the importance of making mistakes when he told us a person who never made a mistake never tried anything new. Unfortunately, mistakes are not often used as a tool for learning. We often see mistakes and we use mistakes as a gauge for our capabilities. We must see our mistakes as proof that we are trying, people, not as proof of failure. You make mistakes, mistakes don't make you. There is no such thing as failure here, people. Only failure to learn from those mistakes. Lie of learning number 4, knowledge is power. Knowledge is important, but it is the performing of some action that is required to make it powerful. And he tells us it's better well done than well said. Put the knowledge into action to unleash the power of information. And a caveat here, right, related to one of the supervillains of learning, the information overload that we are faced with makes it rather difficult to choose the best course of action sometimes. So I think it's just being a little bit more aware of all of that information. And again, maybe limiting some of that information may help you here. Lie of learning number 5. Learning new things is very difficult. Well, people, learning should be at least a little uncomfortable. We must first unlearn, and deciding to do this is difficult. We must detach from potentially long-held beliefs or opinions. Learning then requires effort and discipline above all other things. We must be open to and learn new ways to learn. And becoming more comfortable with the discomfort of learning is a great place to be. I think so. It may end up that learning can be fun, easier, and more enjoyable with this approach. Lie of learning number 6, people, the criticism of other people matters. And part of being limitless is learning to let go of the fear of criticism from other people. Don't take criticism from someone you wouldn't take advice from, right? I've seen so much of this in the younger generation as they get into adolescence, right? Including my 2 beautiful adolescent boys. Young men, even, they're getting so big, my goodness. We start to think a little bit more, too heavily rely on what others think of us, what others think of what we're doing, what we're saying, what we look like, all those other things. Let it go, people. And I love this quote from Jim Kwik, and it says it all about this barrier to learning. The greatest travesty in this world is people preventing and limiting themselves from expressing who they really are because of what other people think. And I think we have to get more comfortable with standing out and taking risks to be wrong and to be a better learner. That's the only way to do it. Lie of learning number 7. Genius is born. Well, he tells us genius leaves clues, right? There's always a method and some profoundly difficult work behind what looks like genius, behind what looks like magic. And he just reminds us genius then is not born, it is made through deep practice. And again, the book goes on and on in fascinating ways to help each of us unleash our greatest potential, our greatest capacity to be better every day in so many ways, our greatest efforts in learning to be better learners. He sets us up for this. And my greatest advice to each of you is something I tell my boys and I've told my nieces and nephews over the years: never stop learning. Learn something new every day. Look for the lessons, people, and share this love of learning by inspiring others to learn something new every day. Whether this comes from you sharing information or perhaps in the form of some insightful and thought-provoking questions. The almighty question, and Kwik pointed out to us that the questions are the answer. I love this, right? Questions tell our brain what is important so that we may let this information into our brains. And this is through the reticular activating system in our brain. Here is where we learn the science behind that opened mind. And it, of course, begins with the question. The curiosity that sparks the question primes the brain to focus on what is most important in the distracting world we all live in. And I just love this concept. And as I was looking for inspiration to create this episode right here, right now, written and outlined on my birthday, all that I needed to do was to keep my head up, my heart open, my mind craving. A little nudge in the form of a question helped to tip the scales into action. My dominant question, and Kwik helps us understand the dominant questions in our lives, is the question that helps to guide our thoughts and actions. That's what your dominant question is. And the question that is so big in our lives, right? It directs our focus and behavior, how we think and how we act. My dominant question has evolved, I think, into how can I help others? This, I remind you, is the purpose and the calling of this podcast. It's been the purpose and the calling of me as a healthcare leader as well, and the purpose and calling of my most important role as a parent. How can I help others? The questions that I walk around asking allows me to prime my brain to be open to the path to help share and learn and grow and evolve alongside each of you. So with every book I read, podcast I listen to, quote I come across, conversation shared, or project worked on in my professional domain, I have on my mind my dominant question: how can I help others? And I love how this came full circle as I came across the integration of this knowledge, right? I've always been fascinated with asking questions and curiosity to get more questions that lead us down a path of new information. Information perhaps that did not exist if it had not been for those questions. And I hope that this has been helpful for each of you in realizing our true potential is still beyond our reach. This lesson is so important for our children again, right? Always push yourself beyond your reach. I highly recommend the book for all of you, but I think it even should be out there for high school seniors or anyone really just beginning their path to higher education. I will likely dedicate a few of our upcoming quick hits or mindful moments, as they might be called soon, that we have in store to some of the additional insights from Mr. Jim Kwik in his ultimate guide to becoming limitless. I love his chapter on motivation and can't wait to share this with each of you. So I'll leave you with the final quote that literally came to me while outlining today's episode. And it is quite incredible that while writing this outline and putting this information together for each of you, I got a wonderful message reminding us of the power of not knowing, that powerful and humbling feeling of discomfort in knowing what we do not know and being open to this. And it's from Corey Muscara. In order to learn something new, we must enter the land of not knowing. The most profound insights are often preceded by the most profound confusion. So people get a little more comfortable with the uncomfortable feeling of not knowing, the uneasy feeling of not being sure of what you know and what you do not know. Scary stuff here, people. But know this, that the path to learning is paved with many questions and unknowable events and outcomes. Look for the lessons and you will surely find them, and they will continue to help propel you forward as your mistakes become lessons. And know that failure to learn is the only failure you must avoid. Thank you all for joining us, people. Please share this episode with at least one other person in your life. This would really mean a lot to me. You can help me answer my dominant question by sharing with others, and I truly believe they will be helped by both of us. Until next time, people, be present and be mindful right here, right now. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time, right here, right now.